Imagine, for just a second, that you are 6 years old.
Okay.
You're standing in the middle of a massive, just completely chaotic city. But here's the catch. You are navigating this absolute whirlwind of a place using only sound, smell, and touch.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Right. Like every zooming bus, every crowded street corner, every shifting scent in the air, that is your entire map. You can't see the skyline at
You
all.
can't read the street signs either.
Exactly. You are mapping this completely foreign universe solely through like the vibration of the ground under your feet and the relentless noise just crashing into your ears.
It is. It's a staggering premise. I mean, most of us rely so heavily on our visual cortex to just parse the world,
Oh, totally. We take it completely for granted.
We do. So the very idea of stepping into an urban sensory landscape like that, especially at such a vulnerable age, it feels incredibly disorienting.
It really strips away all those illusions of control we usually carry around.
It really does. When you can't see the horizon, your immediate surroundings just sort of press in on you. And they do it with an intensity that sighted people rarely ever experience.
Okay, let's unpack this because we are dealing with a transition here that forces you to completely reimagine what it actually means to orient yourself in the world.
Yeah, it's a profound shift.
And that is the mission for today's deep dive. We are jumping back into Nagababu Janu's autobiography, The Unseen Path.
A phenomenal text.
It really is. We're zeroing in on Chapter 2 today, specifically looking at a highly pivotal year, which is 1992.
Right, the move.
Yes, this is the year Nagababu and his family moved to Hyderabad. And it marks his jarring, just intensely sensory-rich first steps into the world of formal education.
To really grasp at the magnitude of this transition, I think we need to establish the thematic framework right out of the gate.
Let's do it.
This move to Hyderabad in 1992, it's not just a change of address, right?
No, not at all.
For this family, and particularly for a young, visually impaired boy, this is a profound sensory and psychological upheaval. We have to look at the baseline he was operating from before this.
Right, because the contrast from Chapter 1 is immense. I mean, in his early childhood, Nagababu was living in Vuyuru, which is his maternal grandparents' village.
A totally different world.
Completely. The way that environment is mapped out in the book is so striking. It had this very quiet, predictable rhythm to it.
Yeah, the sensory details there are so grounded.
They are. Mud floors that were swept and sprinkled with water to stay cool, the smell of wood smoke, the soft clucking of chickens outside the window. It was this sheltered, very tactile, very auditory haven for him.
Well, let's explore the actual mechanics of how a blind child navigates a space like that, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, how does that work in a village setting?
In a village like Vuyuru, the acoustic ecology is human scale. The sounds are localized.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning, you hear the humming of his mother, or a distant temple bell, maybe the faint rustle of a lamp being lit. The geography is mapped entirely by ambient sound, texture, and scent.
That makes sense. It's very intimate.
Exactly. When a child walks barefoot on a swept mud floor, the tactile feedback is soft and consistent. And here's a crazy detail. When they walk past a mud wall, the ambient sound actually changes.
Wait, really? The sound changes?
Yeah, there's an acoustic shadow they can sense. The wall blocks background noise, so they can literally hear where the wall is.
That is wild. I never would have thought of that.
Right. So in the village, that map was knowable. The boundaries were safe, and maybe most importantly, they were static. Things didn't move around unpredictably.
But then, of course, the financial reality sets in. His father's meager, totally unpredictable income as a cycle mechanic, which is compounded by his struggles with alcohol. By the way, it just creates this unbearable strain on the family.
It forces their hand.
It does. They have to make this desperate pivot, so they pack up their sparse belongings and they board a crowded bus to Hyderabad. And I want to pause on this bus ride for a second.
That bus ride is crucial.
Because this is where the sensory assault genuinely begins. The dust blowing continuously through the open bus windows, it's noted so vividly in the text.
And it's not a visual detail for him.
Exactly. It's a tactile one. It's grit in your teeth. It's the smell of diesel.
And consider the physics of sound on an Indian highway in the early 90s.
Oh, man. It must have been deafening.
The windows are down, the engine is roaring, the wind is just howling through the cabin. For a child whose entire reality is constructed through sound, that bus ride is like static blasting through a speaker at maximum volume.
It's just sensory overload.
Complete overload. It actively destroys his ability to map his surroundings. By the time they arrive in the city, the world has just exploded in sheer decibels.
The transition from that rural quiet to the urban roar is absolute. The memory doesn't frame Hyderabad by its architecture, or its skyline. It frames it by its heartbeat.
And that heartbeat is deafening.
Deafening. We're talking about the sudden onslaught of bus horns, these rushing, anonymous crowds, and the relentless rhythm of traffic that just never rests.
This is where we really have to shift our understanding of how an environment encodes itself in memory.
How so?
Well, the city is aggressive. It demands your attention through sheer volume and chemical smells. When you lack sight, you can't just close your eyes to block out a chaotic street.
Right, you can't just look away.
Exactly. You're entirely at the mercy of the soundscape.
And the smellscape, too. There's a really distinct scent of the city captured here. It's this heavy, dizzying mix of fried snacks and petrol fumes.
It's such a visceral, grounding detail.
It really is. If you, the listener, try to put yourself in his shoes, it is like a sighted person stepping out of a silent, pitch-black room directly into the flashing neon lights of Times Square.
That's a great analogy.
But you're experiencing that overwhelming flash entirely through your eardrums and your olfactory receptors.
It's sensory overload on a massive scale. And this overload is immediately compounded by their new socioeconomic reality, too.
Right, they aren't exactly moving into a luxury high-rise.
Far from it. They are moving into severe, concentrated urban poverty.
So the city outside is this absolute assault on his senses, and you would hope that, closing the front door offers some kind of escape.
But it doesn't.
No, because when you are living in severe poverty, inside is just as overwhelming as outside. They rent a single, tiny room, just one room.
And that becomes their entire universe.
Yeah. There's a cement floor that's cool in the mornings, but then it grows suffocatingly warm by night. There's a damaged sink clinging to the wall, a few vessels stacked beside it, and just a simple string hanging above that serves as their clothesline.
That's it. That's the whole house.
That's it. Zero privacy whatsoever.
The architecture of poverty forces a kind of hyper-intimacy.
I can imagine. It must be so claustrophobic.
It is. Poverty and visual impairment are intersecting here to really compound the family's vulnerability. In a single room, every breath, every sigh, every moment of tension or fear is shared air.
There's nowhere to hide.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
There is no physical space to retreat to when the sensory or emotional load gets too heavy. When his father is angry or his mother is weeping, Nagababu is sitting merely feet away.
He absorbs the entirety of that emotional radiation.
Exactly. He feels every shift in the room's temperature, emotionally speaking.
And the struggle doesn't stop at the doorway either. It extends into the immediate neighborhood. There are shared washrooms down a narrow lane, and the air there is described as being thick with a stench that just never left.
It's a harsh reality.
But the detail that really locked me in, the one that stood out, was the daily battle for water.
Yes, the water queue.
We often think of poverty in terms of what people don't have, right? Like a lack of money or a lack of goods. But we rarely think about the time and the sheer physical energy required just to secure the absolute basics.
The water queue is a defining feature of urban poverty, especially in India during that pre-liberalization era in the early 90s, and frankly, in many places still today.
Let's break down what that actually entails for his family.
Let's do it.
Nagababu's mother had to wait in line at a common pump, balancing these incredibly heavy pots on her waist. Or, on some mornings, there was this chaotic, highly physical jostle just to get their share from a municipal water tanker.
It's a fight. Every single drop of water required a fight.
Think about the economics of time and energy there.
Right. When you have to fight a crowd for an hour just to get enough water to boil rice, your entire day is governed by survival mechanics.
You're just constantly playing catch-up.
And it breeds a chronic, low-level cortisol spike in the whole family. There's a constant humming anxiety in the background. Will we have water today? Will the tanker even come?
I think it's crucial for you, our listener, to reflect on this for a moment. Think about how your own environment shapes your sense of security.
We take it so much for granted.
We really do. Most of us turn a tap and water flows. We have doors we can close to shut out the noise of the street.
We have a buffer.
Exactly. When those basic environmental guarantees are stripped away, when your sense of safety is so fragile that even washing your face requires a daily physical battle in a crowded street, how do you even begin to allocate mental bandwidth to higher goals?
That is the pivotal question of this chapter. How does a family living on the razor's edge of survival, in a single room that smells of petrol and open drains, even begin to think about education,
It seems impossible.
especially for a child whom society at large had already written off as a liability.
They do it through this fierce, almost defiant kind of hope. And in this particular timeline, that hope is initially sparked by Nagababu's maternal uncle.
A very important figure.
Very. The family is actually staying near the uncle and his wife, Rajini Kumari, as they try to settle into the city. And the uncle brings up a place called the Durul Shifa Blind Boys High School.
Which introduces a massive, massive psychological shift for young Nagababu.
It really does. Because up until this point, the word blindness was mostly associated with burden, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the subject of whispered worries in the village, the reason for his parents' despair. It was always a negative.
But suddenly he hears his name Nagababu tied to the word education. It was like hearing his name tied to a purpose for the very first time in his life.
We cannot overstate the linguistic power of that moment.
How so?
Words have immense power to shape our internal reality. For a 6-year-old who has only ever felt like an anomaly, hearing his family actively plan for his education, it completely reframes his identity.
It gives him a future.
It validates his existence as someone with potential, rather than just someone with a deficit.
So his mother, his grandmother, and his uncle take him to the Durul Shifa school. And walking through those gates, the auditory landscape completely shifts again.
It does. But this time, it is not the aggressive, chaotic horns of the city.
No, it's totally different.
It is a structured, purposeful environment, and for a blind child, structure is safety.
Yes. The sounds here are just incredible to imagine. There are children reciting rhymes, like Chiti Chilakama, which is this classic Telugu song about a parrot.
A very familiar, comforting sound.
Very much so. And the rhythmic tapping of canes on the ground, the voices of children reciting lessons with actual joy. It's a literal symphony of learning.
It's the sound of other kids who are exactly like him.
Which brings us to the principal's office. And this is a sequence we really need to dissect, I think.
Absolutely, it's a turning point.
Nagababu is brought in, he greets the principal and a teacher, and then the teacher conducts a test. But it is not a test with a pencil and paper or, answering trivia questions.
No, it's very hands-on.
Literally. The teacher places a few coins in Nagababu's hand.
Right. And what happens next is so important.
The teacher places the coins, and Nagababu touches them. He feels their weight, he traces the ridges on their edges, and he identifies them out loud. He says, 2 rupees, 1 rupee, 50 pays.
And he passes this test.
He does. But let me challenge this for a second, because I want to make sure I'm understanding the stakes here.
Sure.
Why is this coin test so significant? I mean, identifying a 2 rupee coin is impressive for a 6-year-old, sure. But isn't it a huge leap for a teacher to assume that just because a kid can feel the ridges on a coin, he's ready to tackle complex academic subjects?
It seems like a leap if you're evaluating him based on standard visual metrics, sure.
Yeah.
But let's look at what is actually happening in the brain during that coin test.
Okay, lay it on me.
The teacher isn't just checking if he knows his money. The teacher is evaluating his tactile discrimination, his working memory, and his cognitive association.
How does feeling a coin test all of that?
Well, to identify those coins, Nagababu has to feel the diameter. He has to feel the thickness. He has to notice the smooth edge of the 50 pays versus the milled, rough edge of the rupee.
Right, there are subtle physical differences.
Exactly. Then he has to instantly cross-reference that tactile data with his memory of what those coins represent.
Yeah.
The teacher is fundamentally shifting the paradigm here.
Shifting it from what to what?
Outside those gates, the world evaluates Nagababu based on what he cannot process light and visual shapes. This teacher is testing what he can process.
Oh, I see.
By proving he has high tactile acuity, Nagababu is proving he possesses the exact sensory tools required to learn Braille and tactile mathematics.
Ah, okay. That is brilliant. It's shifting entirely from a deficit model to a capability model.
That's exactly it.
It's the teacher saying, I don't care that your eyes don't work. Your fingertips and your prefrontal cortex are firing perfectly.
Yes. It is an assessment of neural readiness, not visual capability.
And speaking of the tools to learn, the sounds of the school are just deeply evocative. Later on in the day, he wanders down a corridor and follows a melody to a music room.
The harmonium scene.
Yes. Rama Rao, sir, who is also blind, by the way, is playing the harmonium. Nagababu sits down and tries to follow the ragas. He doesn't master the notes right away, but he feels this profound sense of belonging. Music becomes this incredibly accessible bridge for him.
Because music doesn't require translation for a blind person. It is immediately, holistically available.
It just bypasses the need for sight entirely.
Exactly. But alongside the harmonium, there is another very distinct sound in this school that forms the backbone of his education.
The tailor's frames.
The rhythmic clatter of Taylor's frames.
Yes. For our listener, if you aren't familiar with this, a tailor's frame is a tactile tool used for mathematics. But it's not like an abacus, right? How does this thing actually work?
It is a fascinating piece of engineering, honestly. Imagine a rectangular metal or wooden frame, and across the surface, there are rows and columns of star-shaped holes,
Okay, star-shaped holes.
usually octagonal, meaning they have 8 points.
Got it. An 8-pointed star grid.
Right. And you use these tiny metal pegs, or types they call them. One end of the peg might have a plain bar across it, and the other end might have 2 dots.
So they're double-sided.
Exactly. Depending on which end of the peg you face up and which of the 8 directions you rotated within that star-shaped hole, it represents a different number or a different mathematical sign.
Wait. So if I put the peg in pointing straight up, it's like a 1. But if I take it out and rotate it 45 degrees, it becomes a 2.
Precisely. Now imagine the cognitive load of that.
That's insane.
You aren't just writing out an algebra equation on paper where you can just glance back at the whole line. You are placing these pegs one by one.
And you can't see what you've already placed.
No, you have to hold the entire equation in your working memory, physically feeling your way back across the pins to double-check your work.
That is staggering. The mental math required to keep all those variables straight in your head without a visual reference point. I mean, it's like playing multiple games of chess blindfolded.
And that is why the sound is so important. Imagine a classroom full of 20 students, all rapidly manipulating these metal pins in wooden grooves.
Just clack, clack, clack.
Click, clack, slide. It is the sound of intense mental exertion. It is the sound of equations being solved entirely through touch.
It's the sound of learning.
Exactly. In the chaotic city streets, noise was a hazard, right? It was dangerous. But inside the walls of Darul Shifa, the clatter of the tailor frame is the sound of pure empowerment.
And then right alongside math comes literacy, the introduction to Braille. He talks about his first encounter with it, just feeling the raised dots.
A huge milestone.
He says he tries to move too fast at first, and he just misses the patterns entirely. It's just noise to his fingers. He has to learn to really slow down, tracing each dot gently until the code sort of reveals itself. He says it was like a secret code meant just for people like him.
Let's actually break down how Braille works for a second, because it's a marvel of sensory translation. It's not just raised letters of the English or Telugu alphabet like raised outlines.
Right, it's not just a bumpy letter A.
No, it's a 6-dot matrix. It's arranged in 2 columns of 3, kind of like the number 6 on a pair of dice.
So every single letter or word is a different combination of those 6 dots.
Yes. By learning the specific permutations of these 6 dots, Nagababu isn't just feeling random shapes. He is training the nerve endings in his fingertips to recognize micropatterns instantly.
The neuroplasticity required for this is just incredible.
It really is. The visual cortex in a blind person's brain often gets completely repurposed to process tactile information.
Really? The brain just rewires itself.
Yeah, when he slows down and traces those dots, his brain is literally building new neural pathways to decode a binary language through touch. It is the literal unlocking of literacy.
It's just phenomenal to think about the brain adapting like that. But as with all things in this journey, the empowerment of education comes at a steep, highly physical cost.
Unfortunately, yes.
Because Darul Shifa is a residential school, the uncle suggests that Nagababu should stay in the hostel to fully adapt to this new world, to really immerse himself.
And this is where the narrative shifts from the inspiration of the classroom to the harsh, systemic realities of the era.
Yeah, the daytime symphony of the school gives way to the nighttime reality of the hostel, which is grim. To ease the transition, they do allow his grandmother to stay with him for a few days, but there are no special dormitories for the little kids. There are no cozy beds.
We are looking at an environment of severe resource constraint here.
Severe is almost an understatement, honestly. It's a large, multi-purpose hall. During the day, it serves as the dining room for lunch and dinner. At night, they sweep it, and it simply becomes the sleeping floor.
Just bare floor.
Bare floor. There are no mattresses. The children sleep side by side, shoulder to shoulder, on thin mats placed directly on the hard cement.
And because it is a dining hall, the sensory environment at night is incredibly overwhelming. We talked earlier about olfactory memory, right? How strongly smells are tied to emotion and memory processing in the brain.
Right. The smells here are deeply, deeply ingrained in his memory.
The hippocampus and the amygdala are directly linked to the olfactory bulb. Smell is the fastest way to trigger a memory.
And the smells in that hall, Huge wooden and metal containers storing hot food are kept right there in the room with the sleeping kids. He vividly recalls the lingering smell of cooked rice and sambar.
That spicy South Indian lentil soup.
Exactly. It's mixing with the intense heat radiating from the food containers in the close air. It's hot, it's crowded, and the smell of stale food just never leaves the room.
It permeates everything.
And the tactile reality is even worse. As he tries to sleep on the floor, he can actually feel rats scurrying past him in the dark.
That is just horrifying for a young child. And the mornings offer absolutely no relief.
None. The washrooms are described as having an unbearable stench, with floors that are slick and just buzzing with flies. It's a deeply unsanitary, frightening environment for a 6-year-old who is away from his mother for the very first time.
Meanwhile, his poor grandmother is trying to stay with him, just agonizing over his comfort.
Oh, the grandmother. She literally rests on the edge of a table all night because there is nowhere else for her to sleep. She is trying to carve out this tiny space of safety for him in this chaotic, rat-infested hall.
It's heartbreaking.
So I have to ask you, as an expert, how are we supposed to view this? By today's standards, if you found a school forcing 6-year-olds to sleep on a dining hall floor with rats, we would immediately call it abusive neglect. We'd shut it down in a heartbeat.
That is a very modern, well-resourced perspective.
Yeah.
And it's completely understandable to feel that way. But to truly understand this situation, we really must dive into the sociological backdrop of India in the early 1990s.
Let's do that. Because it feels so jarring compared to the care and the brilliance the teachers showed in the classroom.
Right. It feels like a contradiction.
Oh.
But in 1992, India was just at the very beginning of its economic liberalization. The state was heavily burdened, and social infrastructure, particularly specialized infrastructure for children with disabilities, was profoundly underfunded.
It was an afterthought.
Worse than an afterthought. It wasn't just a low priority. In many regions, it was a non-priority. The schools that did exist were often run by dedicated individuals or under-resourced trusts, desperately trying to stretch a single rupee to cover 100 needs.
So they weren't being malicious, they were just flat broke.
Exactly. The text itself is very careful to clarify this. It specifically notes it wasn't cruelty, education was not comfortable, and space was not sufficient. What mattered was that learning was happening.
Wow. What mattered was that learning was happening.
The administrators had a terrible choice. Turn blind children away because there are no proper beds, sending them back to villages with zero future, or let them sleep on the dining hall floor so they can at least learn Braille the next morning.
That is a brutal economic reality to face.
It highlights the extreme stoicism required to survive poverty. For these families, securing any kind of specialized education for a blind child was nothing short of a miracle. The harsh, rat-infested conditions of the hostel were viewed as an acceptable, albeit painful, price of admission to a better future.
It is a testament to the sheer grit required just to access the basic human right of literacy.
Absolutely.
But that price proves to be too high, at least in the short term for this family. The grandmother tries to be strong, but she just can't bear seeing him in these conditions. She goes back and tells Nagababu's mother, and his mother makes a decisive move.
She doesn't hesitate.
No. She shows up one morning, packs his bags, and pulls him straight out of the hostel.
It is a moment of intense maternal protection. She refuses to let the system break his spirit before it can build his mind.
She takes his hand, brings him home, and tells him, and I absolutely love this line, that nobody could stop him from moving forward in life. She isn't pulling him out of school. She is just pulling him out of the hostel.
A very important distinction.
The very next morning, she places a handicapped bus pass into his hand, and this simple piece of paper becomes an absolute lifeline for him.
It shifts his reality from an institutional one to a commuter one. And once again, we return to the sensory landscape of the city, but notice how the framing changes here.
Right, the city isn't just a monster anymore.
Exactly. The city is no longer just chaotic noise. It becomes framed by routine.
The daily bus ride becomes their shared melody. He learns the specific sensory cues of the route. He starts to anticipate the jingle of the coins in the conductor's hand, the sharp, piercing blast of the conductor's whistle, the deep, vibrating rumble of the old engine.
That's a structured soundscape now.
His mother walks him to the stop, boards with him, waits outside the school all day long, and brings him home. But they aren't alone in this routine for long. Through this daily commute, his mother forms a profound connection with one of the teachers at the school, an Asurya teacher.
An Asurya teacher is a phenomenally important figure in this narrative.
She really is.
She is also visually impaired, and she and Nagababu's mother form an instant, deep bond. It's a bond based on a shared, unspoken understanding of struggle and marginalized existence.
It's incredibly serendipitous.
Yeah.
By a twist of fate, an Assyria teacher actually moves into the house right next door to them.
Proximity changes everything.
It does. She becomes an extension of their family, almost like a second mother to Nagababu. And this creates one of the most powerful, striking images in the entire story, I think.
The procession.
Yes. Every single morning, they form a little procession walking through the chaotic streets of Hyderabad to the bus stop. One blind woman, a small blind boy, and a sighted mother.
It is a striking visual for the public, and it is a masterclass in soft resilience for the family. Let's look at the interpersonal dynamics of that trio for a second.
I have to point out the total inversion of expected roles here. You have a sighted mother. Ostensibly, she should be the one leading the way, right? She's the one with the visual map. But she is the one being guided and taught by the blind teacher.
It is a beautiful subversion of how society assumes disability operates. The sighted mother is a village woman. She's new to the city, and she is deeply intimidated by the noise, the speeding traffic, the aggressive crowds, the shopkeepers.
She is operating from a place of chronic fear.
Exactly. But an Assyria teacher, despite lacking sight, has completely mastered the urban environment.
She knows how the city breathes.
She does. Anasuria teaches the sighted mother how to navigate the city shops. She teaches her how to eat food outside at bustling stalls without hesitation or fear of being cheated. And crucially, she teaches her how to carry herself with pride in public.
She teaches her dignity. She shows this overwhelmed mother how to refuse to be diminished by the world. And as this trio walks together, people on the street notice.
Oh, they definitely stare.
Strangers would stop and stare. But it wasn't just the typical gaze of pity. Some looked puzzled. Some offered help before they were even asked. The presence of Anasuria teacher, walking confidently with her head held high, it transformed the public gaze. It shifted it from pity into a mix of curiosity and genuine respect.
By simply occupying public space with confidence, Anasuria teacher is rewriting the social script in real time.
It's so badass, honestly.
It is. She is proving to the sighted mother, to the young blind boy, and to every stranger on the street that a lack of sight does not equate to a lack of agency. It's a profound daily lesson in asserting one's right to exist in the world.
It feels like they are finally finding their footing. They have a routine. They have this incredible ally in Anasuria teacher. Nagababu is getting his education and thriving in the classroom.
There's always a but in this chapter.
Yeah. Just as he finds safety and empowerment in the outside world, the shadow of his father shatters his peace inside the home.
The contrast between public safety and private danger becomes incredibly stark here. The home, which should be the ultimate sanctuary, becomes the epicenter of unpredictability.
There is this deeply affecting story about a cycle tire. It just absolutely gutted me when I read it.
It's a tough read.
Nagababu didn't have many toys. They obviously couldn't afford them, but he found immense joy in taking an old, discarded cycle tire and rolling it down the street with a stick.
A very common, simple toy.
Right. He loved the clattering, rhythmic sound it made as it bounced over the uneven stones. That sound was his delight. It was the acoustic signature of his childhood play. But one afternoon, he leaves the tire by the front door to go use the washroom.
And this is when the father returns home.
The father comes home, drunk and furious. He
Right.
finds the tire. And from the washroom, Nagababu hears his mother start crying. He realizes, through the sequence of sounds, that his father is using that exact same cycle tire to beat his mother.
Oh, man.
The sound of the rubber hitting the floor, hitting her. He says that the sound of the tire, which was once his pure source of laughter, froze his heart. He abandoned that toy that very day, and with it, he abandoned a piece of his childhood.
We really need to delve into the psychology of what is happening here, specifically regarding auditory classical conditioning.
Like Pavlov's dogs, but with trauma.
Exactly that. In Pavlovian conditioning, a neutral stimulus, like a bell, is paired with an unconditioned stimulus, like food, until the bell alone triggers a response, which is salivation.
Right, classical conditioning.
But in trauma, the brain's amygdala, the fear center, creates these associations instantaneously to keep us safe from future harm. It doesn't take repeated trials. One severe instance is enough.
So the sound of the tire is the bell.
Yes. For a blind child, sound waves are the primary data source for assessing threat levels. The Doppler effect of that tire rolling down the street meant joy. It meant playtime.
But then it flips.
In an instant, the acoustic signature of rubber striking a surface is paired with the agonizing sounds of maternal distress and paternal rage. The brain immediately rewires. It categorizes that specific sound frequency as an extreme threat.
The sound of play is literally instantaneously corrupted into the sound of violence.
It is a profound loss of innocence, mediated entirely through his auditory pathways.
It is just terrifying to think about a child's safe spaces being hijacked like that. And the precarity isn't just inside the house with the father. The physical toll of this life is dragging his mother down, too.
The stress is unimaginable.
Months later, when she is pregnant with his sister, she is walking to pick him up from school, and the sheer exhaustion finally catches up with her. She faints dead away right on the road. A massive lorry screeches to a halt, missing her by mere inches.
It highlights the physical brinkmanship of their daily existence. She is severely exhausted, likely malnourished, carrying a pregnancy, and walking miles in the punishing Hyderabad heat.
Complete strangers, the lorry driver and other pedestrians on the street, rush to her aid. They carry her unconscious body home. But meanwhile, Nagababu is waiting at the school gate.
He has no idea.
None. Hours go by. He doesn't know what has happened. He has no way to find out. He's just standing there crying, tears rolling down his face as the afternoon turns into evening. And then help arrives from a completely unexpected place.
2 senior blind boys from the school notice him.
Yes, they hear him crying. They come over and ask what's wrong. And they don't just express sympathy. They take action. They say, "Don't cry. Come, we'll take you." They gently take his hand. They guide him through the streets to the bus stop. They pay his bus fare with their own meager pocket money. And they navigate him all the way home.
It's an incredible act of solidarity.
Nagababu is so overwhelmed and relieved to find his mother alive when he gets there that he completely forgets to thank the boys who rescued him.
Which brings us to a crucial pedagogical moment with the Anasurya teacher the very next morning.
Nagababu tells her the whole terrifying story, and instead of just coddling him and saying, "Oh, you poor thing, you've been through so much," she gives him a firm, principled lesson. She says, "Nagababu, it's your duty to thank those who help you." It's such a striking response to a child who is just traumatized.
Let's analyze the dichotomy of the world Nagababu is experiencing at this exact moment. Look at where the danger is coming from and where the safety is coming from.
Well, inside his own home, the primary male figure, his father, represents unpredictable violence and danger.
Correct. But outside the home.
Outside, the world keeps catching him. Strangers on the chaotic road save his mother from a lorry. Older blind boys act as his protectors and guides. Anasurya teacher provides maternal wisdom and structure.
Exactly. The outside world, which was initially framed as this terrifying, noisy monster on that bus ride, is actually proving to be safer and more supportive than his own living room.
That is a wild realization for a kid. The strangers are the safety net. But why is Anasurya so firm about him saying thank you? Isn't he allowed a pass because he was terrified?
It's not about moralizing or scolding him. Anasurya is teaching him about agency. When you coddle someone and excuse them from basic social courtesies just because they have suffered, you are subtly telling them they are a victim outside the normal flow of society.
Oh, I see.
By telling him it is your duty to thank them, she is treating him as a capable, equal member of the social contract.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of it like that.
She is teaching an impoverished, blind 6-year-old boy that despite his profound hardships, he still has social power. He has the power to confer gratitude. He is an active, responsible participant in his community, not just a passive object of pity. It is a deeply empowering lesson disguised as a scolding.
Teaching social duty is a form of empowerment. That completely changes how I read that scene. But this family's emotional endurance, which is already stretched so thin, is about to be tested to its absolute breaking limit.
The hits just keep coming.
They really do. We move into the summer of 1993. Following a particularly fierce fight between his parents, the uncle steps in and evacuates Nagababu, his mother, and his younger sister Shalaja back to the village of Vuyuru.
And the journey back to the village is marked by another vivid, almost cinematic sensory memory.
The hailstorm. They are on the bus escaping the city, and suddenly a rare hailstorm hits. Nagababu describes the sound of hailstones rattling violently against the metal roof of the bus. He reaches his hand out the window and feels the ice. He calls it the sensory wonder of stones falling from the sky.
It's a moment of pure magic.
It's this brief, beautiful moment of tactile awe amidst the chaos of their lives. But the awe doesn't last long. In July 1993, back in the village, his second sister, Shanti, is born.
She is described as tiny, fragile, and beautiful. But the relief of a safe delivery is instantly overshadowed by a crushing realization.
The local doctor examines the baby and confirms the family's absolute worst nightmare. Little Shanti, too, is completely blind.
It's devastating.
The text mentions that blindness had been a generational thread on the mother's side of the family. It was this unspoken genetic reality that just kept surfacing, like a dormant seed. When the grandmother hears the news, she just weeps, holding the baby. And Nagababu, even at just 7 years old, feels this deep, suffocating heaviness in his heart.
The sheer weight of compounded grief here is almost unimaginable. Think about the mother's position. She is now raising two visually impaired children in extreme poverty, dealing with a highly volatile and abusive husband, and fighting every single day for their basic caloric survival.
And the medical battle immediately consumes their lives. The father brings them back to Hyderabad, and baby Shanti is admitted to the Sarojini Devi Eye Hospital. For 7 grueling months, the mother essentially lives at the hospital.
7 months at a public hospital in India in the 90s.
She sleeps on the hard hospital floor. She survives on meager, tiny meals brought in by relatives. Her entire existence shrinks to the sterile, frightening walls of that hospital ward. She spends her days whispering prayers, desperately hoping against hope that the doctors might be able to grant her daughter's sight.
It's a torturous wait.
I liken this to holding your breath underwater. You are submerged in this terrifying environment, holding your breath, waiting for a rescue that you desperately need, knowing you can't hold on forever.
It is a state of suspended animation fueled entirely by a mother's desperate hope. And for a brief, agonizing moment, it looked like the rescue might actually come.
Right, a glimmer of hope.
A donor eye is found. They prepare for a corneal transplant. The family wastes through sleepless nights, believing a medical miracle is finally happening to break their streak of bad luck.
But it doesn't. The story delivers the blow in just a few devastatingly simple words. Our hope broke. The transplant failed. Shanti would remain blind.
This raises a critical question about the ecosystem of a family in crisis.
What happens to everyone else?
Right. What happens to the rest of the family while the primary caregiver is holding her breath underwater for 7 months? How does a family absorb this level of compounded grief without completely shattering?
The collateral damage falls incredibly heavily on Nagababu. Because his mother is entirely consumed by Shanti's medical crisis, she can no longer manage his daily commute. She can't walk him to the bus stop. She can't have him at home. So at 7 years old, he is forced to pack his bags and move back into the Durl Shifa hostel.
The very place that was so unsanitary and traumatic that she had pulled him out of it just a year prior.
Exactly. He's thrust right back onto that hard dining hall floor. The smell of stale sambar, the oppressive heat, the rats scurrying in the dark, it's all back. But this time, it's fundamentally different.
Because she isn't coming to pull him out this time.
No. During these 7 months, he has to learn to do all his daily chores completely independently. He learns to wash his own clothes at the pump, clean his space, manage his hygiene, and even help the other younger hostel mates.
Independence is forced upon him by tragedy. The luxury of maternal coddling is gone. His mother's attention is utterly required elsewhere for the survival of his sister. So he must adapt to survive his own environment. This is a massive developmental leap, forced by circumstance.
And it absolutely breaks his heart. He mentions that leaving the hostel for school holidays was easy, but coming back was pure agony. He would cry endlessly, terrified of being away from his mother, feeling the acute pain of that separation.
But the family held firm.
They did. His mother, his grandmother, his uncle, and even his father, they remained absolutely unwavering in their stance.
Their insistence on his education borders on the militant here, but we have to understand it is born of pure, unadulterated necessity.
Right. Even the father, who is so often the source of their trauma and instability, occasionally steps up. There is a detail where the father cycles 8 kilometers just to pick Nagababu up, drop him off at school, and cycle him back. When Nagababu cries and begs to stay home, the family tells him firmly, "Study. This is your strength."
They refuse to give in.
They refuse to treat his education as optional, no matter how much he cries or how hard the circumstances are.
They recognize that education is his only life raft. If they relent, if they let him succumb to homesickness and drop out, they know exactly what awaits him. They're condemning him to a life of dependency, begging, and likely destitution. It is a harsh love, but it is a vital one. They are demanding he build his own armor.
But a 7-year-old can't survive on harsh love and stoicism alone. The human psyche needs comfort. And amazingly, he finds it inside the very hostel he dreaded returning to. He forms a friendship with a senior boy named Govind Reddy.
Friendship in institutional settings is fascinating. It often takes on the heavy structural weight of family.
Govind was a year older and described as gentle and calm. Nagababu says they shared the same ache of separation, the same quiet, gnawing homesickness. In the silence of those dark, hostile nights, laying on the floor, they would whisper about the festivals they missed in their villages, the smell of home-cooked food.
Creating a shared world.
Govind became the elder brother Nagababu desperately needed, helping him turn that isolating loneliness into shared laughter.
It is the human spirit's absolute refusal to be completely miserable. Even in a room smelling of stale food and fear, children will find a way to connect and self-soothe. They build micro-communities of care.
And they do more than just self-soothe. They actively invent joy. This is perhaps my absolute favorite detail in the entire chapter because it is so brilliant.
Good cricket game.
Yes. The children at the hostel want to play cricket out in the yard, but obviously they don't have specialized accessible sports equipment for the blind. There are no beeping cricket balls in 1993 Darul Shifa. So what do? They build it out of literal garbage.
Innovation born entirely of necessity. Tell me how they built it.
They take an empty plastic coconut oil bottle, they fill it with small stones and pebbles, and they seal it up tight. That becomes their cricket ball. When you roll or throw it, the hard plastic and stones rattle loudly over the dirt. And for a bat, they just use a flat wooden slate from the classroom.
It's genius.
They use the sound of the rattling stones to track the ball, and they play cricket.
It is a brilliant adaptation.
Yeah.
And it relies on some very complex auditory processing.
How so?
To play cricket with a rattling bottle, the brain has to calculate the interal time difference.
What? The what?
Interal time difference.
Yeah.
It's the microsecond difference between when a sound hits your left ear versus your right ear.
Okay, I follow.
If the bottle is rolling to your left, the sound hits your left ear a fraction of a millisecond before your right. The brain calculates that delay instantly to pinpoint exactly where the object is in 3D space and how fast it's moving towards you.
So they are doing math while playing.
These kids aren't just playing, they are executing high-level spatial physics using homemade acoustic tools.
That is just incredible ingenuity. They are literally building happiness and practicing advanced acoustic physics out of plastic and rocks. The memory states, "The rattle of the bottle guided us and we chased it with joy. For a while, all our worries disappeared."
If we bring this all together, this final image perfectly encapsulates the entire thematic arc of the chapter.
It really does.
Govind Reddy and the rattling coconut oil bottle represent a profound, irrepressible resilience. Look at their reality. They are stripped of physical comfort, separated from their families, living in stark poverty, and denied the sense of sight. Yet they are out on the dirt, swinging a wooden slate, chasing the sound of joy in the dark.
It's beautiful.
It proves that the capacity for joy is inherent. It isn't dependent on having the right tools, the perfect circumstances, or even a safe home life.
It's so powerful. Looking back at this deep dive, it is staggering to think about the massive emotional, physical, and psychological distance Nagababu covers in just 2 years of his life, from age 6 to age 8.
It truly is a lifetime of experience compressed into 24 months.
He goes from the sheltered, quiet acoustic map of a mud-floored village to the terrifying, noisy sensory shock of Hyderabad. He endures the harsh, sambar-stained floors of a Darul Shifa hostel, the heartbreak of his favorite cycle tire being weaponized in domestic violence, and the crushing, helpless tragedy of his sister Shanti's failed corneal transplant.
It's a gauntlet.
And yet, after all of that, it culminates in this triumphant, defiant rattle of a homemade cricket ball.
He learns to navigate not just the physical geography of a chaotic city, but the complex emotional landscape of grief, social duty, and forced independence.
I want to turn this over to you, our listener. After hearing about the incredible, intricate ways Nagababu mapped his world from the tailor frames to the bus conductor's whistle, I want you to think about the invisible maps you use to navigate your own life.
We rely so heavily on our eyes, on what is placed directly in front of us.
We do, but what are the hidden cues, you know? The ambient sounds, the daily routines, the quiet relationships like an Anna Surya teacher that actually keep you anchored when things get dark.
I'd like to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We so often think of our physical senses, sight, hearing, touch, as merely biological tools for taking in data. But Nagababu's story proves something much deeper.
What's that?
Our senses are the very fabric of our emotional memory. If a simple sound like a cycle tire rolling over stones or a plastic bottle rattling in the dirt can hold the immense weight of both profound, freezing trauma and boundless, liberating joy.
Wow.
What everyday sounds in your own life are quietly writing the story of your resilience.
What a beautiful question to end on. Pay attention to the soundtrack of your life today. You might be surprised by the invisible cues that are keeping you moving forward. That is all for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the unseen path, and we encourage you to carry that thought with you into your day.